I was being pushed towards a style I didn't agree with and I didn't think was good. And I should have had the confidence in myself and my own ability to be like, no, I think this is good. I'm going to continue to play these characters or this way or whatever the case may be.
This is Zento from Esports Heaven, and I have here with me Dardoch from Dignitas. So I'm just gonna lay this out there. Normal question I ask everyone. How was your off season, Dardoch?
Um, yeah, mine was maybe a little more eventful than others, but I think at the end of it, I'm happy. So I say it's a good off season.
Okay. So I gotta ask, what are your thoughts on how TSM handled the off season, in particular in regards to your move and whatnot?
Um, at least from behind the scenes, I'd say that I felt fine. Like, I was handled
Mm-hmm.
pretty professionally, especially my discussions with Reggie and Parth. I think those two always handle things really well. And I have a lot of respect for both of them throughout all my time on TSM. And I have nothing bad to say about those two. They're really hard workers.
Okay, so in terms of just your overall play within TSM itself, or I guess talent suppression machine, do you, I guess, add any weight to that to say that working in TSM's team is very difficult from a jungler's perspective?
Yeah, I'd say for sure there's a lot more. Yeah, there's more to playing jungle for TSM than it is just playing the jungle role. There's a lot more expectations and stuff like that for sure,
Mm-hmm.
and more pressure obviously attached more than other orgs I've been on. Not to say that pressure was like a main contributing factor. I think for
Mm-hmm.
me, I'd say it was more like I have to view the situation in like a way that I can improve on it. So I have to put some sort of blame on myself at some degree, even if I do believe that I wasn't necessarily set up for success, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I view it in a sense of like I was being pushed towards a style I didn't agree with and I didn't think
Mm-hmm.
was good. And I should have had the confidence in myself and my own ability to be like, no, I think this is good. I'm going to continue to play these characters or this way or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case may be, right? That's all.
Okay, so let's move away from TSM and let's talk about Dig because I mean, you guys are trying to do this 10-man roster type thing, and we've heard this from other teams before. So, what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Um, yeah, like you said, people have tried it before, and I've been a part of teams who have tried it before, so I
Mm-hmm.
know. Let's say I'm pretty experienced in like a 10-man roster format. I think it's only as helpful, I guess, as skilled as both teams are. So like if
Mm-hmm.
there is a lot of people I think in the past have tried it with a traditional um, kind of academy level roster and then an LCS clearly LCS level roster. Um, for as for Dignitas, I think in my opinion, I think both rosters, like I think all 10 players in both roles are or every player in both roles is pretty similarly skilled, and I think
Mm-hmm.
everybody at the end of the day is at an LCS level. So I think we could have potentially more success than other teams have had in the past, especially in like a concept of like being practice partners with each other specifically could be very helpful, I think.
Ah, that's a good point. So, all right, let me be frank with this question. I felt like, or at least I feel like, you've been more careful in interviews recently. Now, I say this in the context of another player who was in a similar position as well, albeit less skilled. Shots fired with Gilius. So he famously said, I believe it was an episode on Listen Loco, Rip, that he was going to tone down giving his opinion on social media and interviews because he was berated on this in the past. What's your take on the idea on measuring your words?
Um, I think in a sense of like, in a sense of just what's it called, just expressing your opinion. If you do it in any sense, in like in the public, if you do it in a strong way, there's obviously going to be people with strong opinion of the opposite, right, that are going to argue against you just as strongly as you're arguing for your point, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think in general it's good to just tread lightly in that sense, where you shouldn't come off too strong in your opinion unless for some reason there's other cases where I'm more passionate about it, or I'm very like hard-headed and I think I'm really right, so I might
Yeah.
go off on it for a bit. But just in general nowadays I try to stay away from, you know, not necessarily expressing myself, but
Mm-hmm.
just, giving 110 for what I really think, unless I'm
Yeah.
very, very, very passionate about it. So like if
Okay.
I got like a NA solo queue question of like, what do you think so bad about NA solo queue? I'd probably go 110 because I'm not
Yeah.
really care. I don't really care about people arguing with me on that topic, you know. But
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
gonna be like, yo, Josh, do you think you're the best jungler in the region, and who do you think you're better than? I'll stay more humble and be like, yeah, I think anybody could win. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. It's just pointless conflict from my perspective.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool. So speaking of solo queue, what are your thoughts on Fiddlesticks?
I think Fiddlesticks is a really cool champ, honestly. I think he's the biggest issue for me, at least when I'm playing AP junglers in solo queue, not just Fiddlesticks, or just AP
Mm-hmm.
junglers in general. I don't think there's enough physical damage options in like solo lane, for example. Well, maybe not in top, obviously, because you got like your Aatrox and your Set and stuff like that, Renekton.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, in like mid lane specifically, most of the meta champions are not physical damage, so it's hard to sneak like a Fiddlesticks into your team comp without it really ruining your damage split if you have like a traditional mage middle. So I'd say he's not necessarily gated by anything other than the fact that he's a magic damage champ and he requires a lot of money. So in a sense of
So
like what he does in the team, he's just dealing a bunch of damage and he's magic damage, right? So you'd get that from mid a lot easier than having a Fiddlesticks on your team.
So I guess your fundamental quirk with Fiddlesticks is that it's hard to fit him into a team comp.
Yeah, pretty much, because he kind of wants to be the only magic damage source, in my opinion.
Mm. Okay. So why are we seeing Graves come back into the meta? I know that he was one of your better champs back in the day. So why are we seeing Graves now?
Graves originally came back because Trundle was really popular. He's been a
Mm.
traditional counter to Trundle for like as long as Trundle jungle's been a thing, at least from my perspective. I think as soon as Graves got reworked, how his interaction with just dashing through the pillar,
Mm-hmm.
and he takes phase rush Keystone now, so it becomes even harder to close the distance on him. It becomes a really impossible matchup for Trundle. And Graves started popping up again, like Graves almost always does. He pops up as a counter for some specific guy who's willing to take the risk of playing an AD carry in the jungle.
Mm.
And then after one guy does it successfully, every other jungler in the world is like, yo, I want to play that character, man.
Yeah.
Because it was Cuz this time, at least I thought it was Cuz. He was the first one I saw in the LCK finals. He was playing Graves. And he
Uh-huh.
was even blind picking Graves. So it was like, what is this guy up to? I hadn't
Yeah.
seen Graves for so long. Um, but yeah, it turned out that Graves had been so strong for so long, and like the last few buffs that he had received were honestly not very meaningful for how he's gonna go through the jungle. Where I think it was like a 10 plus damage Q buff or something like that,
Mm.
and like some small stats got buffed. Where obviously these things are meaningful, but he was probably arguably just as strong for such a long time beforehand. And the death dance change was really huge for him as well. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Just kind of
Um,
flew under the radar, basically.
yeah, the death dance change was massive for sure.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, he just kind of became the strongest champ overnight, and it wasn't very foreseeable, at least from the patch notes perspective, from my view.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Well, this has been Azento from Esports Heaven and Dardoch from Dignitas. Thank you for your time, man.
Yep, no problem. Thanks.